Text Chris Davey, lighting designer. Chris is a middle-aged man with bald head and close-cropped silvery and brown beard. He's wearing a grey jumper with 2 wide stripes across the chest and arms in a burgundy and blue, and he's sitting in a brightly lit room with a white wall behind him. Text. What is the role of a lighting designer?
The role of the lighting designer is, I always think it's kind of the glue to all the departments. It's about how the audience see the performance, but it's also very much about helping to tell the story as a creative member of the team.
Text. How do you work with the other members of the creative team?
Esther, the director, is very interested in a collaborative team. So I think more so than ever, it's about sharing information, to talking and building on each other's input. So, for example, Simon, the video designer, he is providing some of his work already, so I can see that on a laptop. So then that informs some of my choices through colour, through texture. So I'll be building on what he's doing. The design is very specific. The first part is an island and a cloth behind. So it's quite an open world. It's quite generous. So a lot of that will be about colour on the cloth and kind of a more together, open sense. So that's basically what Verity is providing. In the second part, it's very disparate. The company, there's 5 separate islands. There's an iris upstage, so it's a very different feel. So that's very helpful for me to be able to as a launch pad.
Text. How does the lighting help to create the world of the play?
Design-wise for this piece, normally I would be trying to create an atmosphere and to tell specific locations. So to a degree I'll be doing that, but actually within the text most scenes are described. So the actors will actually say within the first few lines where we are. So it kind of gives me a little bit more freedom and a bit more kind of artistic license to actually go more with the atmosphere of the piece than necessarily saying we're in a schoolroom, for example.
Text. How does the lighting change to convey different locations and spaces?
So basically my design, the concept, if you like, so far. So just to explain that I see a run through tomorrow afternoon. So everything that I'm talking about is theory at the minute. But because the piece goes from relatively domestic, small, to enormous, intense, operatic scale. So I guess the various elements, the tools that I'm going to use, a lot of cross light. So this is lighting from the side, which is very sculptural. It means that the actors stand out from the scenery. It's very beautiful. It's great for modelling the body, and it's used a lot in dance. So there's going to be elements of cross light. I'm going to use elements of uplighting. There's going to be quite a lot of lamps on the floor so that we can use shadows on the cloth behind. So, as well as kind of slightly more traditional open scenes of, more traditional lighting.
Text. What colours are you using in the production?
I suppose as a lighting designer, I have colours that I like to use, but equally I'd like to think that I can be quite open to other input. So again, talking about Simon, the video designer, there'll be certain colours and shifts. He's using a lot of monochrome, so I guess I'll be, in terms of lighting, that is kind of black and white as such doesn't really exist. It's kind of tones of white. You can either have like a warm white or a very cold white. But in terms of colour and texture, I guess what I like is kind of smoky colours. They all tie in together a bit more, so there's a kind of another element of cohesion, I guess, for want of a better word. But in terms of colours, I think the first part, I should say, which is on the island, is kind of that they're on the beach a lot. So I think that is going to be brilliant sun, beautiful, crisp, clean. We want to get a sense of their enjoyment being on the beach. And then gradually as the piece, as we go through the piece, it gets a lot colder, a lot harder. Elements of the crosslight will be coming in. So I think there's kind of hopefully the audience will get a real sense of journey.
Text. What lighting equipment is being used in the production?
So within the lighting rig, there are elements of hired equipment. So we'll be touring this, taking it with us to each of the venues. It's kind of modern LED equipment that's all colour mixing. So for me, it's fantastic because you can choose the colours. There's a finite number of colours. It's red, green, blue and white. So within that you can choose whatever you like. But quite often what is very exciting is that you can do very, very subliminal shifts of colour. So or it can be very big obvious stuff. You can literally be going with one single lamp, you can be going from a very warm kind of intense colour to a cooler quality, and you can actually see the colour changing on the actor's skin. And then there's also an element of the equipment, quite old generic equipment. So generic is kind of non-moving lamps, profiles, parkans. So parkans were quite an old rock and roll lamp. They're very bright and very intense light, and they're fixed. They don't move automatically. So I'm using a lot of that for the beach in the first act. So it's kind of two elements to it. There's kind of the very much fixed rig, which will be punchy and bright, and then the more colour mixing elements, the LED equipment.
Text. Can you talk about the sustainability of modern lighting technology?
Fairly early on in the process, I was asked about contributing to the sustainability element of the production. So that can be looked at in two ways. So I've just mentioned about the LED equipment. So actually, the technology of LED has been around for probably 40 odd years, but in theatre, it's probably about the last 15, 20 years. And where it has become actually a vital tool, I'd say these days, is probably in about the last 5 years. The great thing in terms of sustainability is that it hardly uses any electricity. And theatres are very much trying to reduce their carbon footprint, reduce the amount of electricity they're using. So actually, an LED rig is a fraction use of electricity compared to the old sort of generic equipment. So there is also another element for this production in terms of touring, in that if we're travelling with our LED equipment, obviously then there's transport and there's diesel involved, whereas actually if you're using the equipment of the theatre, it's already there. So there's actually quite a balance to be had, or quite a big discussion about modern sustainability.
Text. How does the lighting contribute to the design of Orpheus?
So one of the elements of the design, quite a big important element of the story, is the story of Orpheus. So it's a suggested character. We don't ever see Orpheus as a person. There's lots of discussion about the sexuality of Orpheus, but basically in terms of lighting, we do see the shadow. So it's also, so again, we haven't done it yet, so this is theory, but my idea is that we're going to be going from a scene, possibly closed down, when the company start talking about Orpheus, so that then a shadow of Orpheus can come out from nothing. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of variety of shadow play. We're going to try and do Orpheus in several different ways. I think the first time we see Orpheus will just be as a strobe behind a cloth. So an actor in front with, an actor behind with just a flashing image, so that it's very subliminal. You don't quite know whether it's happened or not. There's other times that I want to have an actor behind a cloth and have perhaps two different angles of light, so that you see a slightly, not pixelated, but a kind of, again, slightly strobing, but just so that the shape appears to shift. So that we keep trying to tell the story of Orpheus in different interesting ways. So we kind of keep building every time that you see Orpheus or Orpheus is mentioned.
White Pilot Theatre logo on a mint green background.